The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the UES Resilience. Commander Jake Morrison stood by the large window, watching the distant suns twinkle in the darkness. His ship was patrolling the outer edge of Federation space, far from the busy, core worlds where most aliens lived. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years now. Ever since humans joined the Galactic Federation, they had become the patrol officers of space. The other alien races said humans were good at handling trouble because they thought differently than everyone else. Jake wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. "Commander, we're getting a distress signal," said Lisa Rodriguez from her pilot seat. She was young but skilled, one of the best pilots in the human fleet. "It's coming from the research station on Kepler 442b. Jake turned around. The research station was run by the Zanari, a race of aliens who could read minds. They were studying some old alien ruins on that planet. "What kind of distress?" "They're saying something attacked them. The message is breaking up, but I can hear screaming in the background." Ben Parker looked up from his engineering station. He was a big man with dirty hands from working on machines all day. "That's strange. The Zanari don't usually scream. They talk to each other with their minds." Dr. Amy Collins stepped onto the bridge. She was the ship's doctor, but she also knew a lot about alien races. "If the Zanari are screaming out loud, they must be really scared. Their telepathy might be blocked somehow." Jake made his decision quickly. "Set course for Kepler 442b, full speed." The journey took 6 hours. During that time, they tried to contact the research station many times, but got no answer. Jake felt worried. The Federation had been peaceful for hundreds of years. Nothing ever attacked research stations. When they arrived at the planet, Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. The research station was still there, but it looked wrong. Parts of it seemed to be covered in some kind of black metal that moved like liquid. Strange shapes crawled over the buildings like giant insects. "What are those things?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking. Amy studied the scanner readings. "I don't know. They're not in any Federation database. They seem to be part machine, part living creature. There." Ben pointed to a small ship flying away from the station. "Someone's escaping." Jake ordered Lisa to catch up with the escaping ship. When they got close, they saw it was badly damaged. Inside was Kethvar, the Zanari scientist who ran the research station. 2 other aliens were with him, but they looked hurt. They brought the survivors onto the Resilience. Kethvar was shaking, which was very unusual for a Zanari. His large eyes were wide with fear. "Commander Morrison," Kethvar said, his voice weak, "you must warn the Federation. We found something terrible in the ruins, something that should have stayed buried." Amy took care of the injured aliens while Kethvar told his story. The research team had been studying artifacts left by an ancient race called the Precursors. The artifacts contained warnings about creatures called the Devourers. The Precursors left these warnings before they died out, Kethvar explained. They said the Devourers come every million years to destroy all advanced life in the galaxy. They eat both living things and machines, growing stronger with each meal. Jake felt sick. How many of these Devourers are there? The warnings weren't clear. But they destroyed the Precursors, and the Precursors were more advanced than any race we know today. Ben looked at the scanner data from the research station. "These things are spreading. They're covering more of the station every hour." Over the next few days, the news got worse. The Devourers attacked 3 more Federation worlds. Each time, they won easily. Their ships were alive, able to heal damage and adapt to any weapon used against them. They consumed everything in their path. The Federation called for all military ships to fight the Devourers. Jake's ship joined a human battle, group led by Admiral Susan Blake. She was a tough woman who had fought in several small wars before joining the Federation. "Listen up," Admiral Blake told the human captains during a video conference. "These things are unlike anything we've ever faced. They learn from every battle, but that doesn't mean we give up. Humans have always found ways to win against impossible odds." The first major battle happened near the human colony of New Montana. Jake watched from his ship as 50 human vessels fought against 5 Devourer ships. The enemy ships looked like giant metal spiders with too many legs. The battle was brutal. Human ships fired everything they had, but the Devourer ships absorbed the damage and kept fighting. Worse, they seemed to learn from each attack. When the humans used missiles, the Devourers grew armor that stopped missiles. When they used energy, weapons, the Devourers adapted shields. Jake's ship fought bravely alongside the others. Lisa flew like her life depended on it, dodging attacks that would have destroyed them. Ben kept the engines running even when the ship was badly damaged. Amy treated wounded crew members while the battle raged around them, but it wasn't enough. One by one, human ships were destroyed or consumed by the enemy. Jake watched in horror as the UES Liberty was swallowed whole by a Devourer ship that opened like a giant mouth. "All ships retreat," Admiral Blake ordered. "Fall back to Earth." The retreat was heartbreaking. They had to leave the colonists on New Montana to face the Devourers alone. Jake watched the planet grow smaller behind them, knowing that millions of people were about to die. On Earth, the situation got worse every day. More human colonies fell to the Devourers. The alien races in the Federation started to panic. Some said humans had brought this curse on the galaxy with their violent nature. Others said nothing could stop the Devourers. General Peter Hayes, the head of Earth's military, called all remaining human forces to Earth for a final battle. Jake's damaged ship limped home along with hundreds of others. Many ships never made back. The final battle for Earth lasted 3 days. The Devourers came in massive waves, their ships covering the sky like storm clouds. Human pilots fought with desperate courage, knowing they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. Jake flew his ship into the heart of the enemy formation, firing at everything that moved. Around him, other human ships exploded in bright flashes. The Devourers seemed endless, and they kept adapting to every human tactic. On the 3rd day, General Hayes made the hardest decision of his life. He ordered all remaining human ships to scatter and hide. "We can't win this fight," he said over the radio, his voice heavy with sadness. "Save yourselves. Maybe someday, someone will find a way to stop these monsters." Jake's ship was one of the last to leave Earth. As they jumped to hyperspace, he looked back at his home planet. The Devourers were already covering it like a disease, consuming everything humans had built over thousands of years. The human race was scattered, beaten, and nearly extinct. Across the galaxy, the other Federation races watched in fear, knowing they might be next. Hope seemed impossible. The Devourers appeared unstoppable, and humanity's light was fading into darkness. But Jake Morrison and the other survivors didn't know that their defeat was just the beginning of a much larger story. Sometimes the darkest hour comes right before the dawn. 25 years had passed since the last human warship fled from Earth. The galaxy was a darker place now. Half of all Federation worlds had fallen to the Devourers, and the survivors lived in constant fear. Zara Thompson crouched behind a pile of scrap metal on the asteroid mining station called Delta 7. She was only 12 when humanity fell, but now she was a grown woman leading a small group of human survivors. Her dark hair was cut short, and her clothes were patched from years of hiding. "They're coming," whispered Tony Miller from his hiding spot near the airlock. He used to fix ships before the war, but now he spent his time fixing hiding places and escape routes. His hand shook as he held an old energy rifle. Through the station's dirty windows, they could see Devourer scout ships searching the asteroid field. The creatures had grown smarter over the years. They no longer just attacked and consumed. Now they hunted for survivors, knowing that hidden enemies could cause trouble later. Kate Johnson crawled over to Zara. She had been a soldier in the human fleet, one of the few who escaped the final battle at Earth. Her left arm was gone, lost in a fight with Devourers 5 years ago. "We need to move to the deep tunnels. If they find us here, we're dead." Alex Chen, barely 20 years old, worked frantically on a small computer. He was trying to block the station's power signals so the Devourers couldn't detect them. "Give me 2 more minutes, I'm almost done." The group of 30 humans living on Delta 7 had survived by being very careful. They scavenged supplies from abandoned ships, traded with smugglers, and never stayed in one place too long. But it was getting harder. The Devourers were everywhere now, and they never forgot a place they had searched. Far away, on the core world of Zentara Prime, the Federation Council met in secret. The beautiful crystal towers that once reached toward the stars were now covered with defensive shields. The Zenari, who used to be confident telepaths, jumped at every shadow. Admiral Kylthon stood before the remaining Federation leaders. His blue skin was pale with stress, and his large eyes showed the weariness of 25 years of losing battles. "We have lost the Vorthak homeworld," he announced. Their crystal fortresses were cracked open like eggs. The Devourers have new forms that eat minerals. The council chamber fell silent. The Vorthak had always seemed impossible to kill because they could turn their bodies into hard crystal. If even they could not survive, what hope did anyone have? "How many worlds do we have left?" asked Delegate Mirka of the Delphians. Her fish-like features showed deep sadness. 3 of her people's ocean worlds had been drained completely, leaving nothing but dry rock. 47 core worlds remain under Federation control, Kylthon replied. But the Devourers are moving toward the Galactic Center. We estimate 6 months before they reach us here. The delegates looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Some wanted to surrender. Others talked about running to distant galaxies. But Admiral Kylthon had been studying something that gave him a strange idea. "I have been reviewing the battle records from the human war," he said. "The humans lasted longer against the Devourers than any other race. Their ships were weaker, their weapons less advanced. But they fought for months, while other species fell in days." "The humans were primitive," said Counselor Vextar of the Andromedans. "They fought with emotion instead of logic. That is why they lost." "But they also did things the Devourers could not predict," Kylthon argued. "Perhaps that is what we need. Now, the ability to be illogical." Meanwhile, Rebecca Stone sat in a bar on the trading station crossroads. She looked like a Delphian trader, with fake gills and blue-tinted skin. It was a good disguise that had kept her alive for 20 years. Nobody suspected that a human could be hiding among them. She listened to the conversations around her. Smugglers and traders brought news from across the galaxy. Most of it was bad. The Devourers were building something huge in the Vega system, some kind of living factory that made new types of creatures. But Rebecca also heard something else, rumors about humans who were still alive and fighting back. A cargo ship captain claimed he saw human ships attack a Devourer patrol near the rim. A mining crew said they found evidence of human settlements in the asteroid belts. Rebecca finished her drink and left the bar. She walked through the dark streets of the station until she reached her small apartment. Once inside, she activated a hidden communication device. "This is Ghost calling Night Owl," she whispered into the device. "Do you copy?" After a few moments, a voice replied, "Ghost, this is Night Owl. Good to hear from you. What's your status?" "Still alive and gathering information. The Federation is scared. They're talking about retreat to the Outer Rim, but I'm hearing rumors about our people." "Are the stories true?" There was a pause. "Some of them. We're not as dead as everyone thinks. Stay safe, Ghost. Big changes are coming." The transmission ended. Rebecca smiled for the first time in months. She had been part of a human intelligence network that operated in secret across the galaxy. Most people thought all humans were dead, but they were wrong. Back on Delta 7, Zara's group had managed to hide from the Devourer scouts. They waited in the deep tunnels for 3 days before it was safe to come out. When they finally returned to their living areas, they found something that made their hearts race. A message had been left on their communication system. It was coded in old human military language, but Zara could read it. "All remaining humans, report to Rally Point 7. Operation Phoenix is active. Humanity endures." Tony stared at the message. "Phoenix? I thought that was just a legend. Something they talked about before the fall." Kate smiled grimly. "I was there when they planned it. A group of scientists and soldiers were supposed to go into hiding and work on secret weapons. Most of us thought they were crazy." "Where is Rally Point 7? Alex asked. Kate checked an old star chart. "It's in the Sol system, near where Earth used to be." The group looked at each other. Going back to human space was incredibly dangerous. "The Devourers," controlled that entire region. But the message offered something they had almost forgotten about: hope. All across the galaxy, similar messages reached other groups of human survivors. On hidden bases, in refugee camps, and aboard disguised ships, humans began to stir. They had been hiding for 25 years, but maybe it was time to stop hiding. Jake Morrison received his message while leading a guerrilla attack on a Devourer supply convoy. His hair was gray now, and his face was marked with scars from years of fighting. He read the message 3 times before he believed it. "Sir?" asked his second-in-command. "What are your orders?" Jake looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other humans were still fighting. Maybe they had found something that could turn the tide of this war. Maybe humanity wasn't finished after all. "Set course for the Sol system," he said. "It's time to go home." The Federation continued to retreat, but they didn't know that, in the shadows, humanity was beginning to move again. The Devourers had won every battle for 25 years, but they had made one mistake. They had left some humans alive, and humans were very good at learning from their defeats. The galaxy's darkest hour was about to end, though nobody knew it yet. Hope was returning, carried by the scattered children of Earth who refused to give up even when giving up seemed like the only logical choice. The hollow asteroid looked empty from the outside, just another piece of space rock drifting in the outer edges of the Sol system. But inside, it was alive with activity. Nearly 1,000 humans lived and worked in the hidden base they called Haven. Dr. Amy Collins walked through the busy corridors, watching scientists and engineers work on projects that would have seemed impossible 25 years ago. Her hair was white now, and she moved with a cane, but her mind was as sharp as ever. "Doctor, the new weapon tests are ready," said Captain Ryan Foster. He was younger than Amy, born after the fall of humanity. His parents had been refugees who made it to Haven when he was just a baby. Now he commanded the secret military force they had been building. Amy nodded and followed him to a large chamber deep inside the asteroid. On the walls were strange devices that looked part human technology, part something else entirely. They glowed with soft blue light. "We finally figured out how to build the precursor weapons," Amy explained to a group of human commanders who had recently arrived at Haven. "But there was a problem. The weapons only work for minds that can think in ways the precursors couldn't." Jake Morrison stood among the commanders. He had made the dangerous journey to Haven after receiving the Phoenix message. His ship was hidden in the asteroid field outside, along with dozens of others that had answered the call. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Amy smiled. The precursors were very logical, like most of the Federation races. They thought in patterns. That could be predicted. But the Devourers learned to predict those patterns too. That's why the precursors lost. She pointed to one of the glowing devices. "These weapons need someone who can make decisions that don't make sense. Someone who can choose to do the wrong thing at the right time. Someone who can embrace chaos instead of order." Captain Foster stepped forward. "We've been training a special unit for 20 years. We call them the Ghost Division. They fight using human instincts instead of military tactics." In another part of Haven, Maria Santos was teaching a class of young soldiers. She was small and quiet, but when she spoke about battle strategy, everyone listened. Her ideas were strange and often seemed crazy, but they worked. "Forget everything you know about normal fighting," she told her students. "When you fight Devourers, logic will get you killed. They adapt to logical attacks, but they can't adapt to something that doesn't make sense." One of the students raised his hand. "But how do we win if we're not fighting smart?" Maria grinned. "Who says not being logical means not being smart? Sometimes the smartest thing to do is the dumbest thing anyone would expect." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the message was spreading. Zara Thompson's group had made the dangerous journey from Delta 7 to a meeting point in the Centauri system. They met with other human survivors, sharing supplies and information. "How many of us are there?" Tony Miller asked as he looked at the growing collection of ships. Kate Johnson had been counting. "More than we thought. I'm seeing ships from places we thought were completely destroyed. Humans are stubborn. We don't die easily." At the same time, Rebecca Stone was using her position in Federation intelligence to steal important information about Devourer movements. She had learned that the creatures were building something massive in the Vega system, but the Federation didn't know what it was. She sent coded messages to Haven through the secret human network. The big construction project is almost finished. Whatever they're building, it's huge. Bigger than anything we've seen before. The information reached Dr. Collins within hours. She studied the data with growing concern. "It's a nexus," she told Captain Foster. The precursor warnings mentioned these. "It's a living factory that can build unlimited numbers of new devourer types." "How do we stop it?" Foster asked. "We don't," Amy replied. "We destroy it. And to do that, we need to do something so crazy that even other humans will think we've lost our minds." The plan that Amy and her team developed was indeed crazy. They would attack 17 different devourer positions at the same time, using tactics that appeared completely random. The attacks would serve two purposes. They would confuse the devourers, and they would announce to the galaxy that humanity was back. Admiral Kylethon of the Federation fleet was studying reports when the first attack happened. A small group of unknown ships had attacked a devourer patrol near the rim. The attackers used weapons that the Federation database didn't recognize, and their flight patterns made no sense. Who could be using such chaotic tactics? He wondered aloud. His answer came when more reports arrived. 17 attacks, all happening within hours of each other. The attackers were human, and they were winning battles that should have been impossible to win. One report particularly caught his attention. A single human ship had destroyed a devourer cruiser by ramming into it at full speed, but somehow the human ship had survived while the devourer exploded. It defied all logic. Kylethon made a decision that surprised his own officers. He sent a message on all Federation frequencies. "Any human vessels receiving this message, please respond. The Federation wishes to discuss an alliance." The response came from an unexpected source. Dr. Amy Collins appeared on his communication screen, broadcasting from the hidden Haven base. "Admiral Kylethon," she said calmly, "we've been watching your battles with the Devourers. You're losing, because you're fighting them the way they expect to be fought." "You're supposed to be extinct," Kylethon replied, though he didn't sound angry. He sounded hopeful. "We've been very busy staying alive and learning how to fight," Amy said. "We've discovered weapons that can hurt the Devourers, but we need Federation resources to use them properly. Ships, fuel, raw materials." "What do you want in return?" Amy's smile was fierce. "Help us destroy the Nexus in the Vega system. After that, we teach you how to fight an enemy that adapts to logic by using tactics that aren't logical." The negotiation took 3 days. Some Federation members didn't trust humans. Others thought the plan was too dangerous. But as more reports came in of successful human attacks, opinion began to change. The turning point came when a combined human Federation team successfully destroyed a devourer planet killer. The massive creature had been heading for the Delphian homeworld, but Captain Foster's Ghost Division intercepted it. The battle was recorded by Federation observers. They watched in amazement as human ships performed maneuvers that should have resulted in their destruction. One pilot flew his fighter directly into the creature's mouth, then ejected at the last second while his ship's explosion tore the monster apart from inside. "How did they know that would work?" Admiral Kylethon asked after watching the recording. "They didn't," replied his tactical officer. "They just tried it and hoped for the best." That's when Kylethon understood. The humans weren't just using different tactics, they were using a completely different way of thinking. They were willing to risk everything on chances that logical minds would never take. The alliance was formed within a week. Federation factories began producing human-designed weapons. Human commanders started training Federation crews in chaos fighting. Most importantly, the combined fleet began preparing for the assault on the Vega Nexus. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his rebuilt ship, now called the UES Phoenix. Around him, hundreds of human and Federation vessels prepared for the largest military operation in galactic history. "All ships report ready," Lisa Rodriguez announced from the pilot's seat. She had survived the years of hiding and was now his second in command. Jake looked out at the massive fleet. Human ships with their patched hulls and improvised weapons flew alongside sleek Federation vessels. It was a sight he had never thought he would see again. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. Operation Phoenix begins now. Time to show the galaxy that humanity never learned how to quit. The combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for the Vega system and the final battle that would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. Behind them, hidden bases across the galaxy activated, revealing that humanity had not just survived but had been preparing for this moment for 25 long years. The Vega system looked like a nightmare. The massive Devourer Nexus floated in space like a living city, its black metal surface pulsing with red veins of energy. Around it, hundreds of Devourer ships patrolled in perfect formations, waiting for any threat to approach. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the UES Phoenix as the combined Human Federation fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Nearly 2,000 ships spread out in attack formation, the largest military force assembled in galactic history. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, Jake spoke into the communication system. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Trust your instincts, not your computers. Phoenix Squadron, begin the chaos. The battle started immediately. Human ships scattered in all directions, their flight patterns looking completely random to outside observers. Some flew straight at the enemy, others seemed to run away, and a few just spun in circles. The Devourers tried to predict where they would go next, but couldn't. Captain Tony Miller commanded a converted mining ship called the Hammer. His crew was mostly other miners and mechanics who had learned to fight during the long years of hiding. Remember, boys, he called to his crew. We're going to do something really stupid in about 30 seconds. The Hammer flew directly toward a massive Devourer battleship. The enemy vessel opened its weapon ports, preparing to destroy the small human ship. At the last moment, Tony ordered his crew to dump their entire cargo hold of mining explosives. The explosion was so large it could be seen from the other side of the system. When the light faded, both the Hammer and the Devourer battleship were gone. But Tony's sacrifice had cleared a path for 20 Federation ships to attack the Nexus directly. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Foster led his Ghost Division in a ground assault on the Nexus itself. Their ships had landed inside the creature's body, through wounds created by the space battle. Foster and his soldiers ran through corridors that were part machine, part living flesh. "This way," called Maria Santos, leading a team toward the Nexus core. She wasn't following any map or scanner readings. She was following her gut feeling about which direction felt right. Behind her, Federation soldiers looked confused but followed anyway. The Nexus tried to defend itself. Living walls moved to block their path, and immune system creatures attacked like antibodies fighting an infection. But Maria's team moved unpredictably, sometimes backtracking, sometimes splitting up for no apparent reason. "Why are we going this way?" asked a Zanari soldier. "The scans show the core is in the opposite direction." "Because that's what it wants us to think," Maria replied, turning down a corridor that looked like a dead end. "Trust me." Dr. Amy Collins was aboard a Federation science vessel, working frantically to activate the precursor weapon network. The ancient devices required precise timing and coordination across 17 star systems. But they also needed something else. People willing to sacrifice key positions to make the plan work. "Admiral Morrison," she called over the communication system, "I need you to position your ship directly in front of the Nexus main weapon. It will destroy you, but that destruction will trigger the precursor network." Jake looked around his bridge. Lisa Rodriguez was at the pilot controls, her face set with determination. Ben Parker was in engineering, keeping the engines running, despite massive damage to the ship. They all knew what Amy was asking. "Understood, Doctor," Jake replied calmly. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Admiral Morrison. It's been an honor serving with you all." But as the UES Phoenix moved toward its sacrificial position, something unexpected happened. Rebecca Stone, still working undercover in Federation intelligence, had discovered the Nexus weakness. She transmitted the information to all human ships at the last moment. "The core isn't in the center," she broadcast. "It's in the outer ring, disguised as a defensive system. Hit coordinates 347 Mark 12. Jake immediately changed course. Instead of flying toward certain death, he led his squadron in a seemingly random attack on what looked like an unimportant part of the Nexus. The Devourers didn't even bother to defend that section properly. The attack worked. Human weapons, designed using precursor technology and powered by human chaos thinking, tore through the Nexus core. The massive creature began to convulse and die, its death screams echoing across space. But the Devourers had one last surprise. As their Nexus died, they released something they had been holding in reserve, their Queen Mind, a massive entity that had been coordinating their entire species for millions of years. The Queen Mind was bigger than most space stations, a writhing mass of metal and flesh that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. It immediately began taking direct control of all Devourer forces, making them fight with perfect coordination. All ships fall back, Admiral Kylthan ordered from his Federation command vessel. We cannot fight that thing. But Jake Morrison had a different idea. He looked at his damaged fleet, at the brave humans and aliens who had followed him this far, and made the most illogical decision of his entire career. All ships, ignore that retreat order, he announced. We're going to ram that thing. Everyone, full speed directly at the Queen Mind. Don't think about it, just do it. The order was so insane that even other humans questioned it. Flying the entire fleet directly into the enemy's strongest weapon should have resulted in complete annihilation. Every tactical manual in the galaxy said it was suicide, but that's exactly why it worked. The Queen Mind had evolved to counter logical thinking. It could predict and defeat any rational strategy, but it had no defense against an action so completely irrational that no sane species would ever attempt it. As 2,000 ships flew directly toward certain death, the Queen Mind's processing systems overloaded. It couldn't understand why anyone would make such a choice. The confusion spread through its network, causing chaos among all Devourer forces. In that moment of confusion, Maria Santos and her team reached the real core of the dying Nexus. They planted the final charges that would destroy the precursor weapon network along with everything else in the system. Everyone out now, Maria shouted as alarms began sounding throughout the Nexus. The evacuation was chaotic. Ships fled in all directions as the Nexus began to explode from within. The Queen Mind, still confused by the humans' illogical attack, failed to coordinate an effective pursuit. When the explosions finally stopped, the Vega system was quiet. The Nexus was destroyed. The Queen Mind was dead, and the remaining Devourer ships, without central coordination, began fighting each other instead of the Alliance fleet. Over the following months, the scattered Devourer forces were systematically eliminated. Without their collective intelligence, they were just dangerous animals that could be hunted down and destroyed. The galaxy began to rebuild. The Federation worlds that had survived started to reopen trade and communication. Human colonies were re-established on worlds that had been abandoned for decades. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood on the observation deck of the new space station orbiting Earth. The planet was green again, its cities rebuilt, its people hopeful about the future. Zara Thompson had become the first human ambassador to the reformed Galactic Council. Her experiences as a survivor had taught her valuable lessons about cooperation and trust between different species. Dr. Amy Collins, now very old but still sharp, led the effort to study and preserve precursor technology. Her research would help future generations defend against threats they couldn't yet imagine. In the memorial garden on Earth, Rebecca Stone planted flowers from dozens of different worlds. Children of many species played nearby, their laughter filling the air with hope and joy. The final memorial plaque was simple. To all species lost in the Devourer War, they gave up hope. Then humanity came back, in memory of those who fell, in honor of those who endured, in celebration of those who never learned to quit. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most illogical thing to do is exactly what needs to be done. And sometimes, hope can survive even when survival seems impossible. Humanity had returned from the darkness, not with superior weapons or greater numbers, but with something more powerful. The stubborn refusal to give up, even when giving up made perfect sense. In saving the galaxy, they had proved that diversity of thought and approach was not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. The stars shone peacefully once again, and this time, everyone knew that peace was worth fighting for.